Joining me now is MP, Conservative leadership candidate, former Mayor of Huntsville, Ontario, Scott Aitchison. Scott, great to have you on the program. You're a former mayor, so you know about housing. Let's just start here. A lot of people don't know you. You're not a sort of nationally known figure, let's say Pierre Poilievre or Jean Charest. Why should people consider you a future leader of the Conservative Party?
Because I'm a solutions-oriented individual. You just mentioned that I'm a former mayor. Well, mayors are actually in the business of solving problems and getting things done. I come to this opportunity in my career in Ottawa without any of the baggage of Ottawa, but years of experience of actually getting things done, particularly on the housing file, where we actually got real solutions in place in Huntsville and actually got more properties built, more homes built. And that's what we need in Ottawa, real action to get actually properties built.
Okay, look, and I know Huntsville well. I grew up going there my whole life. Building homes in Huntsville is different than the very diverse situation across the country. What are the solutions to lower house prices across the country and increase supply quickly?
Well, it's a question of supply and demand. We need more supply. And part of the problem we have in this situation across the country, particularly in larger centers, is a divisive and political planning system where zoning constantly causes a problem. So we, as a federal government, of course, are not involved in zoning, but we give billions of dollars every year at the federal level to municipalities for infrastructure, and we can actually tie that money to actually ending exclusionary zoning and getting more homes built.
But Scott, that doesn't sound like the most conservative solution. That's central government, federal government is going to give money and tie strings to it. Conservatives, I thought, didn't want central government telling local communities what to do with their money. I thought that was philosophically the opposite. Sounds like a liberal solution when they're given $4 billion over 5 years to try to do the same thing.
Well, the liberal solution is to announce billions of dollars and never actually accomplish anything. This is the conservative part of this plan is actually getting something done. And I think Canadians actually aren't interested in ideological entrenchment. They're actually interested in solutions. And if we can tie that money to getting things done and ending exclusionary zoning, we can get something done. We can actually get units built, and that's the issue, supply.
Okay, but just philosophically, if you'll tie money to build houses, if you win, would you tie money, would big government tie money on health care? Would big government tie money, always strings attached from the federal government to the provinces and municipalities? Is that the kind of government that you'd run?
Well, there's currently all kinds of strings attached to federal health care funding, and of course, we've never lived up to the original promise of our health care funding in the first place. That's another major issue that we need to deal with. But I'm focused on housing today, and we need to move the logjam. We need to get this moving, and the only way we're going to do that is by all levels of government working together. And if the federal government can be involved, that's the way to be involved, by working together, by tying that money that we give every year to making sure that municipalities and provinces actually get through the zoning process and get units built. Pierre
Poilievre says that one of the problems with the housing crisis is that the Bank of Canada and the monetary policy was printing money. He says, quote, stop the central bank from printing cash or politicians to spend and the wealthy to borrow. That will deal with some of the over-demand. Do you agree?
Well, I think there's no question that the central bank certainly printed a lot of money. And most central banks in the Western world printed money to get us through the pandemic, and they did what they needed to do. It's time to stop that. It's time to rein in the spending at the federal level and target it to solving problems. And this is the problem that we need to focus federal resources on, is getting more houses built.
Let me get some, people got to get to know you. So let me do some rapid fire. Carbon pricing. You supported the former Conservative leader Aaron O'Toole's climate plan, which included a price on carbon. Do you support a price on carbon?
No, I would cancel the carbon tax because I think it severely penalizes people that live in rural area and people on fixed incomes who can't afford to make a choice to ride the subway.
How would you deal with the lowering emissions? Would you have a climate plan? What is it?
Absolutely, we need to lower emissions. There's no question about that, but we need to actually assist Canadians to reduce their footprint. I recognize that a carbon tax may be the most effective and efficient way to do this, but it's not the fairest way to do it. We need to work together. We need to work with provinces. We need to work with municipalities, and we need to help Canadians reduce their footprint, not punish them.
Okay, so you think it's effective but not fair. Childcare, would you scrap the Liberals' deal with all the provinces and territories when it comes to the new childcare?
No, I'd honor those agreements. They've worked hard to get them done, and I would honor them.
Did you support the trucker protest?
What I said about the trucker protest was that it represented a much larger dissatisfaction and anger in the country, and that to ignore it was unwise, and the government shouldn't do that. I said from the day one that, you know, the protests were actually breaking the law, and that it was time for that to end. But that we need to recognize that Canadians are frustrated in this country, and we need to move forward. And part of the reason they're frustrated is because of a politics in this country that is designed to divide us. And that's what I seek to change.
Well, it's interesting because this leadership race has been pretty rough. Jean Charest was on this program last week saying Pierre Poilievre should be disqualified as the leader because he says his support of the truckers was implicitly a support of the illegal blockade. Do you agree?
I'm actually uninterested in what they're saying to each other. I'm interested in proposing solutions and a positive message that Canadians are interested in. So I don't care what the other campaigns are saying. I want to talk to Canadians about solutions to solve the problems that they face every day, and I think that any time spent talking about what other candidates are saying to each other is a waste of time.
Okay, in the past, your party has been hung up on social conservative issues. As you know, the questions about things like abortion. Would you make those things free votes? Where are you on the social conservative issues?
I believe that issues of conscience should be free votes. In fact, I think there should be more free votes in the House of Commons. I think that our party can get along just fine if we all respect each other, and this is part of the problem. In leadership positions, we have to engage and empower the team around us, all of them. Even people we disagree with. Unity doesn't have to mean uniformity, but it does mean we have to respect each other and to work together and to find solutions to problems as opposed to getting hung up on what divides us. And that has to be true of our party as well as our country. Okay,
MP, Conservative leadership candidate Scott Aitchison. Thank you, sir. I appreciate you joining us.
Thanks, Evan.